All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Schaller. I'm the director of the NIMAC and joined here today by Stacy Fontenot, our expert Duxbury transcriber for what I know is going to be a really excellent six-part series on textbook transcription using Duxbury and NimPro. On the welcome screen here, you'll see the list of all of our upcoming sessions. So today is really going to focus on some introductory information, and then jumping into section 2 is going to start with your front matter. Session 3, getting into the body matter or the meat of the textbook. Session 4, the rear matter, glossary, index, and all of those things. And then session 5 is going to be kind of a deep dive on math. We know that's a big topic and one that people want more information on. So we'll have a whole session devoted to that. And then session 6, the NIMAC will offer kind of an overview of eBraille, the status of eBraille and eBraille production, as well as an opportunity for additional Q&A on anything that we've talked about during the course of these 6 sessions. So we hope you'll ask questions during our meetings, but you're also welcome to email us questions in between, things that you think of, and we will try to get those answered throughout. With that, I'll hand it over to Stacy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Fontenot. I am an independent Braille transcriber. My business is Fontenot, and I am a Nemeth and literary certified transcriber. Predominantly do Nemeth, have done predominantly Nemeth for 15 years. I have been using actively Duxbury products since 2010. I was introduced to them in 2007, and the Duxbury systems product environment has provided me efficiency and accuracy and the bread and butter for how I do things. I absolutely love Duxbury products. And so I'm really pleased and grateful that the NIMAC has asked me to go over some things and show you my thought process and some tips and tricks as we move through what Duxbury offers. Before we get into it, I wanted to let you all know about something that's happening with ICEB. They're the ones that kind of oversee UEB and as the code, and they are having next Thursday a town hall online meeting about a significant change to the grade 1 indicator and placement, and this affects the guidelines for technical material. It will be after our session next week. So we're going to have our session, and then after the session, this one will be happening. If you would like to participate in that, please go to the iceb.org website, and right on their front page, they have a line to link to for you to sign up to register. Liz, did you want to take over from here?
Sure, yeah, and Alexa did pop that link in the chat as well for you to register for the town hall too. So before we get started, I'm actually going to launch a quick poll to learn more about who has joined us today. So please just take a moment to indicate which of the options best describes your role. Are you a NIMAC authorized user or state coordinator? Are you a NIMAC accessible media producer? Are you a Braille transcriber who's not registered with NIMAC currently? Are you a TVI or paraprofessional, or do you fit in that other category? And if you do fit in the other category, please do put in the chat what your role is, because we'd be curious to know. We'll give it just another moment. Okay, let's see. I'm going to end the poll and share our result. So it looks like 16% of you are NIMAC authorized users or state coordinators. Another 14% are NIMAC accessible media producers. So welcome everyone who is a current NIMAC user. And then we also have our bigger groups actually are Braille transcribers not registered with NIMAC and TVIs and paraprofessionals. So welcome. We're so happy to see you here today. And then we also have 6 folks, 12% who responded other. It looks like someone, oh yeah, Ray's here. She is a tactile graphics artist. some Braille transcribers or folks working on their certifications. So that's great. Thank you all so much for being here. And we really hope that there's something here for everyone. So like I mentioned, this first session is going to focus on NIMAS files, also a little bit about working with the NIMAC, what does it mean to be a NIMAC accessible media producer if you aren't one already. We'll get into that. And then Stacy's going to kind of cover some NimPro basics for folks who have never utilized it before but are maybe considering it. So your learning objectives for today are to identify the components in an NIMAS file set, that PDF, the XML file, that metadata file, as well as the images, and how all of those are used for textbook transcription. Uh, you're going to learn how to access NIMAS files as an accessible media producer. You're going to learn how to download, save, and convert a NIMAS file to a Braille file with appropriate Braille styles using NimPro. And finally, we're going to explore the NimPro features that help with your initial formatting, so your headings and your table of contents. And our outline of today's session, first, Stacy's going to kind of give you an overview of those Duxbury products and that environment that they provide for Braille transcription. Then I'm going to cover a little bit about the NIMAC and how to obtain NIMAS files. Then we're going to hop back over. Stacy's going to talk more about the NIMAS file more in depth, as well as provide information about NimPro. And then also there will be a demo portion today. The demo portion of each session, each of the other sessions will be longer when we really get into the transcription process, but there will be a demo today as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy.
All right, so let's talk a bit about the software products that are in the Duxbury systems environment. We'll start with NimPro. NimPro is the product that takes your NIMAS XML file and you can manipulate and change some of the structure and interact with the text and export that to a working transcription file. And NimPro really provides efficiency because it can make changes in a large structural way. It can also make refined changes to the text and helps you understand the transcription project for page estimations. And then with that exporting component, if you're in a team environment, you can either export for individuals in your team, or you can even split it up where someone's working in NimPro and then someone is doing the transcription. So there's some ways that adding NimPro in allows for a team dynamic. In NimPro, you can also export by sections or by pages, or you can even make it by user selection. So you don't always have to go from page 1, 2, 3 down. You can make selections in varied ways. A caveat about NimPro is that it does require Duxbury, an activated Duxbury licensing to run. It does not run just on its own. Another thing about NimPro that is kind of nice is if you don't have the print right in front of you, NimPro can give you a down and dirty visual of the textbook. So at least you have something by which to compare and work from. DBT is where the majority of the meat happens when it comes down to turning it into Braille. It's for translating print to Braille. It's got a DXP is its native format type. And then DXB is the Braille. So when you're working with the print DXP, when it translates, you get the DXB. These are two separate files. They're not the same. So once you've translated, you gotta close that and get back to your print. Exporting or save as to BRF, which is that Braille ready file. It's a text file that is outlined that there are 40 cells and there are 25 lines. And then you can put it out to a refreshable Braille with the LBF format. So why not just open the NIMAS XML file in DBT? So much information is in these NIMAS files. They're marked up. They have information about what that text is. Is it a list? Is it a heading? Is it a paragraph? Is it a caption? And when that XML file gets opened in DBT, that information gets lost. The powerhouse that is part of this NIMAS file gets lost. And you lose a lot of time if you have to go through and start formatting all the headings again and all of the lists again. Another aspect is DBT opens Word documents, but not RTF files. And if you're in like a Braille 2000 environment, it's the inverse. It opens RTF files, but not Word documents. But that Word document is an important part because you can integrate Microsoft Word into your transcription workflow. NimPro will export to Word. It will export to Duxbury file format. So from the NimPro XML, you can go to Word or to Duxbury. Using Word is not necessary, but man, is it helpful. You can utilize all that powerhouse that Microsoft as a word processor gives you. Duxbury provides a Pane template. This is a Word template, and it has all of these great styles made up in it that marry over to Duxbury. Building off that Word template is a product called Swift, which is free and it's available at the duxburysystems.com website. This one has a ribbon that gets added into Word, and it does quick point and click tasks for marking up your text or formatting it. We will see Swift more in our next session when we mark up and do our preliminary pages. The big one that I use a lot of in Microsoft Word is just that advanced find and replace with wildcards. You can just do a lot to find and make selections and apply specific formattings. And then if you have the wherewithal, you can also capitalize on those macro capabilities. If you find that, oh man, I'm constantly file after file having to find and replace doing this, you can record it, make it a macro, and then not have to type it into the find and replace window every time. So we've talked about the NimPro, we've talked about Duxbury, we've talked about Word, but what's actually happening between these programs? So the NIMAS file is an XML file that has markup. This markup are tags that are descriptive of the text. NimPro looks at those specific tags and then says, okay, here they are, and here's what they could be in Braille. All of the tags that are in a NIMAS file don't map over to what we have in Braille. So NimPro is that happy place that marries the two. And then from NimPro, we can go to Word, we can go to DBT to further on in the transcription process. And what's happening between the programs is kind of what's called remapping. And it's just remapping the style in one file to a style understood in another file. So if it says H1, please call it H1 centered heading. So then that way, what's understood of the style in Duxbury becomes a centered heading. So the idea here is that we have a transcription workflow. We have our NIMAS file that we use in NimPro, and we make some heavy lifting changes in there. And we export the selections that we want to work on. We do not have to make changes through the whole entire book. We can go back at any time and just pick up the pieces that we need. We can go and say, oh, I want all of Unit 1, or I just want Chapter 1, or I just need the chapter review from this chapter. So we can always return to NimPro through our entire transcription process to get what we need. From there, we can choose our two directions of workflow. We can go NimPro to Duxbury. We can go NimPro for our intermediate word processing, and then over to DBT. So that intermediate word processing best accomplished in Word in the DBT, in the Duxbury environment. And we can always rinse and repeat as needed. And during the transcription workflow, you can always go back and forth between NimPro to Word, and then the next section you want to do NimPro directly to DBT. You don't always have to be stuck because Duxbury will open up those Word files. So this is always in flux, but here are the options available during the transcription process. Another side note, for screen readers, the Duxbury products do work with screen readers. DBT works with NVDA. Narrator needs to have that Braille TTY installed in order to work. And they both work with JAWS. And when I say both, I'm saying NimPro and DBT. When using DBT, most users prefer to uncheck the box support for UI automation. And if you need any help, okay, the UI automation is actually in Duxbury. So you got to go to Global Internationalization. That's where the UI automation check is. But at any time, you can use Insert H or Insert Q to get help while you're in DBT with JAWS. And then flipping over to the NimPro, the NimPro help recommends using the hotkey for Speak All and Read Active Window in order to get the best out of NimPro. So there's a bit. Both of these products have good help files as well that address screen readers. So if you need more, check your help on those. Okay, and some resources that we're going to talk about today and throughout the sessions is Duxbury Systems. Dux User Group is fabulous because you can search previous discussions, you can add to the discussion. It's at, find out more about it at the Duxbury Systems website. There is a discussion link. NimPro 3.0 and also the Mac 2.0 versions are also at the Duxbury Systems, clicking on NimPro. Shout out here also for the TGIL hosted at APH. If you are looking for some graphics to put into your workflow, please check Image Library at aph.org. And if you've come across something that you think would be a good addition to the TGIL, there is a link in order to request a graphic or to even donate a graphic. We spoke a little bit earlier about iceb.org. That's the rules of UEB, where the code book lies. That's where you can register for the upcoming event. BrailleAuthority.org, sorry. That's where all of our BANA guidelines are. That's where you're going to find Braille formats, the Chem guidelines, your NEMIF. Yeah, go down the rabbit hole at BrailleAuthority.org. Also, keep in mind that NFB has the Braille certification. So if you're looking for the lesson manuals for proofreading, for literary, for music, for NEMIF, those are at the NFB for program services under the Braille certification. So program services, Braille certification drop down. And then another resource that I often use when it comes down to the tactile graphics component, which we will talk about down the road and touch on, is a product called Notepad++. It's free. It's a real easy text editor. It's like WordPad, but it has just some nuances that makes it a little beefier than just the Notepad or the WordPad that comes with your operating system. Okay, Liz, NIMAC accounts.
Yeah. We did have one question in the chat, which I think you maybe are going to address later, but Allison was asking, when you're describing this workflow, could we pull over only one section of a book easily?
Yes, completely easily, because you can just make the selection in NimPro and export it. And at the end of our slideshow, I'm going to be demoing some NimPro, and I'm going to show some different ways to make various selections and exporting. So if you have more questions after the demo, please ask at that time, but we will do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so before I talk a little bit about the NIMAC, I'm going to launch another poll. We are interested in knowing more about your experience with NIMAS. So, how would you describe your experience level working with NIMAS? Do you consider yourself highly experienced, moderately experienced, or new to NIMAS? I'll give you a few more moments to respond. But considering I think over half of the folks attending did not identify as NIMAC users, I'm thinking we're going to have some folks who are new to NIMAS today. Okay, I'll go ahead and end our poll. So it looks like 65%. So by far the majority of folks here today are new to NIMA. So welcome. We're so happy to have you. And then 31% said they were moderately experienced, and just 4% said they're highly experienced. I will say I do find transcribers to be a modest group. So there may be some people in that moderate category that really are pretty experienced. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the NIMAC and NIMAC AMP accounts. All right, so for folks who don't know anything at all about the NIMAC, it stands for National Instructional Materials Access Center, and it was created by IDEA 2004 to serve as the national source file repository for K through 12 textbooks and instructional materials. The NIMAC makes NIMAS files available for use in producing accessible formats like Braille, large print, and accessible digital formats for K through 12 instructional materials. I do want to point that out because I think it's very important when we're talking about Duxbury and some of what Stacy was talking about with mapping and remapping of files. Something that's really important about the NIMAS file is that it's used to create formats other than Braille. So you can use NIMAS to create DAISY files, to create EPUB, to create large print. So it has to be really multifunctional. It wasn't designed just for Braille production. So that's why you kind of have to do some special stuff to make it into that Braille that you need. To date, we've received over 90,000 file sets from over 200 educational publishers, and all 50 states and the eligible territories, as well as the Department of Defense, all work with the NIMAC. So if you're from anywhere in the United States with us today, you are in a place where they are coordinated with the NIMAC. In each state that works with the NIMAC designates a small number of authorized users in that state who have full access to the repository. Any individual or organization that produces accessible formats on behalf of eligible K through 12 students is welcome to sign up for a free NIMAC AMP account. So unlike authorized users who are designated by the state, AMP accounts are freely available. AMP accounts are also able to have multiple sub-users. So you could have one account for an organization or a district with multiple sub-users, or you could have individual accounts. Each person could have their own account if that's better for you. The important thing about NIMAC AMP accounts is that you are only able to download NIMAS files that have been assigned to you by the authorized user. So you don't have access to everything. You can search the full repository, but you can only download files that have been assigned to you. Authorized users can provide files in two ways. They can either provide you with the NIMAS files directly, and that might be a workflow that you're familiar with already. They sometimes download files themselves and just provide them via email, or they can assign them to you directly in your NIMAC AMP account if you have one. Authorized users work under a state education agency. There are often authorized users at an instructional resource center, for instance, sometimes at a school for the blind. And if you need an IMAS file assigned to you, it would be assigned by an authorized user in the state in which the accessible format is needed. So the authorized user is they're responsible for certifying the eligibility of the student that needs the format. And so even if you live and work in a different state, it's the state in which that student is receiving an education that would assign you that NIMAS file. If you happen to need help getting connected with an authorized user in the state, please reach out to us and we will be more than happy to connect you. And then finally, for those of you who are not already registered as NIMAC accessible media producers, all you need to do is reach out to nimac@aph.org and we'll get that process started. It's pretty simple. We'll add your information in the system and you'll receive an email with a link to complete an online registration. And then you'll also receive a limitation of use agreement that outlines the copyright restrictions with NIMAS files, as well as that eligibility information. And all you'll have to do is initial each page of the agreement and fill out and sign section 14.0 and send that back to us. And once you've completed both the registration and sent us your limitation of use agreement, we'll activate your account. And again, those accounts are free. There are no restrictions in terms of, duration or anything like that.
Thanks, Liz. I always like getting the background of the NIMAS, the NIMAC, and these NIMAS files, and how I can get my hands on them. So if you are trying to figure out how can I get these files, the NIMAC is a direct source where they can help get you to the right person to get that set up for you. Because sometimes being an independent transcriber, you feel a little bit lost and out there because you're not in with an educational agency per se.
Mm-hmm.
So reach out
Right.
to the NIMAC and
Yes.
get help from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thanks, Liz.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about a quick review of how we get files from the NIMAC. So we log in, we choose the title that's been assigned to us, and we add it to our downloads, and then we can choose what type of content of that book we need, and then it's added to a downloads to complete the process. So we're going to kind of zoom through this, but I want to point out and have you guys see how it's done, but point out some unique things. But at the YouTube link, there is a great walkthrough that goes step by step, a lot slower than what we're going to do. So when you go to nimac.us, you have your screen and there is a login button in the upper right. Click on that button to gain access. Your username is a designated format by the NIMAC. So your AMP is going to be your username.amp.admin. It's not your email address. So always remember, it's an AMP admin account. Once you've logged in successfully, you should come to your title assignments page, but if you're ever within the NIMAC itself and kind of looking around, you can always get to this screen by clicking the title assignments below the search field. This listing are the books that have been assigned to you by an authorized user. If you don't have something there, please reach out to that authorized user. And if you haven't connected with them, reach out to the NIMAC. There's a checkbox next to the title that you're looking at. Click the checkbox and it'll add it into your downloads. There's it won't add it to your downloads per se. It's a button right at the top and you'll see that increase with how many check marks you have. So the number will increase the more checks you make. Click that button and it'll add it to another section of the NIMAC where you go. No. When you add it to your downloads and then you click on it, you get another intermediate step. And this is a pop-up. And what this pop-up allows you to do is decide what kind of content do you want. I always go for full download. Just give me everything. I want the images. I want all the math. I want everything that could possibly be in there. But sometimes you may have already, like maybe you just need the XML for whatever reason. This pop-up allows you to radio check the content type you want to download. If the title you are selecting does not have MathML, then that option will not be available for you. At the bottom is a blue button to agree and abide by the limitations of use agreement with the NIMAC. And once this dialog box has been interacted in and you click the button, then it's sent off to your download section. And it sometimes can take a little bit of time for it. So you'll may see pending on next to the title that you want. Also note, you can hang out on the website and wait for the download to be completed. You can also just leave it and come back to it later and get an email. So at the top of my downloads is a little checkbox where you can receive an email notification when that download is all ready for you in the download section. So here we are in my downloads. The download is no longer pending. It is ready to download. I can click the download button, and when I do, my browser will start downloading the file into the folder that I have designated for my downloads. For the majority of us, that is the downloads folder on the Windows. If you've done something different or are using a different aspect or a browser that's different or have changed something, that will be where it will go. So let's say I got, I requested the wrong type in my downloads. When I got that pop-up radio button, I chose the wrong type. I need a different type. You can delete these entries in the My Downloads and then return back to your title assignments and start this process over again to check the box and add it to your downloads. Just because you delete something from the downloads does not mean that it's deleted from the assignments of yours. Another really nice thing that I'm going to kick off that I was so happy to learn about. If you come across a file, if you're working on a file and you're got the print book and you start realizing that there is text in the print that's not in the NIMAS file, please come back to your downloads and use this quality feedback button. And that was just an example of something that may happen because we know those print histories, the print changes, but the ISBN doesn't. So this file quality feedback is great because when you click it, it remembers everything about that particular title, and then you can just fill out the form, and then the folks at the NIMAC know exactly what book it is and the problem that needs to be addressed. When you're done, log off. Okay, Liz, are there any questions or anything that you wanted to add or expand on from that section?
No, I think you did a great job. I am not seeing any questions in the chat either, but just to reiterate, if you want like a more in-depth step-by-step on the downloading, we do have that video for you that really walks you through. So please do take a look at that.
Awesome. Okay, so now let's take a look at the NIMAS set file components. Am I doing this section?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. We've been going back and forth. I want to make sure I'm not taking away any time from Liz. Okay, so when you get your NIMAS file, it is a zipped package that you have to unzip. The weird thing is NimPro will actually open the zip folder and then you can interact with it. So my recommendation is don't do that. Actually unzip the folder on your computer system and work with the XML file in NimPro. When you have that zip and you've unzipped it and you've got the sections within, I always keep my original zip together with that because I have been known to make mistakes or delete something and I need to just kind of grab the original out. But always, if all else fails, you can always go back and re-download it from the NIMAC. So you can always have that in your back pocket. But for those of us that sometimes get it, through a Dropbox directly and we haven't gotten it assigned in an AMP account on the NIMAC, it's just nice to have that original zip. We all wear so many different hats in different ways, don't we? So, Okay, this is a screenshot from Windows, and I always say how to unzip your NIMAC folder. I always like to right click and extract all because everybody has a different version or they have a different thing. My Windows don't have the button that says extract all up at the top. Many of you may have that button that as soon as you select a zip, a button shows up. So this is just one way to unzip a NIMAS folder by right-clicking and extract all, and then follow the pop-up for choosing the location of the chosen destination for what is being unzipped. So earlier we touched a little bit about what was in the NIMAS package. So depending on which one you downloaded from the NIMAC, it will have graphics or it won't. So if you chose no graphics, you won't have any. But if you do, you've got some powerhouse right there, which we'll go into a little bit later on. So typically your folder has images, which have subfolders within divided by the book structure. This OPF, which is a metadata file, isn't that EPUB related? Nod yes or no.
Yes, yeah, it's like the package file. So it lists all of the files that are contained within the NIMAS file set, and then it also includes the metadata, which is our system extracts that. So when you're in the NIMAC, you can kind of quickly see the metadata. You can verify the title information and the copyright year and all that. But you could also look at the OPF and get the same information there.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks, Liz. Like
Hmm.
super background information for y'all. It does have a PDF. It is not the entire textbook. It is just that information required for copyright, but it is a great resource for where you get the information for creating your title page in Braille. And then the XML, which is the big meaty portion that we love so much, which is the contents of the book. And that is the file that gets worked with in NimPro. Okay, so looking more in the NIMAS package were those images, and we have these different files, and we'll look at that during our demo. But one that I really wanted to call out was that's weird. So the package has all the chapters and the front matter and the rear matter, and those are kind of easy to ascertain because they're like numbered, right? But there's this folder called throughout, and it has all the stuff that you'll find throughout the book. What a way to name the folder, right? So I love this folder because it gives me such a great idea of what I'm going to need to do in terms of icons that are in there, or maybe even possibly missing text. So here's an example. We have all of these different icons that I know I'm going to have to kind of devise something for. But that box, that blank box, is that going to be a bullet? Is that going to be a blank box in a math equation? What is that blank box going to be? But what it's done is it's put it in my mind of when I'm looking at the text, when I am transcribing, to be somewhat aware that if I see that box, it's not going to be in my print because it's an image rather than in the print. So I always love, I really like working in the folder structure when I first get a book. All right, before we get into NimPro, do we have any questions?
Let's see. I'm not seeing any in the chat, but I will go ahead
I
and.
I have a question,
Oh,
Liz.
sure.
Hi, Stacy. It's Paulo. So when do you know when to put in that box like you were describing? Like if it's
I-
like a bulleted list and it's
It's
not
when you
in.
yeah, it's when you come across it in print.
Okay, so you have
Like,
to be
yeah,
looking at the print version of it before you to make that decision or
right. Like you're
yeah.
going through and all of a sudden you have a list, and let's say it's a nested list with three structures. I got a black bullet, I've got a hollow bullet, and the third section is square bullets. Why they didn't use a square in the text is the question. For some reason, it's an image. That's an example where all of a sudden I've got this nested list, but in my text, I don't have it. So it gives me the clue that I need to add that in.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. That's what
Yeah, good question. Okay, we have one more poll. I'm going to go ahead and launch it. And this will be very informative for us as Stacy starts to do her NimPro overview and then the demo portion of NimPro. We're curious about your workflow as a transcriber. So, which of these options best describes your transcription process? I work with a team of other transcribers and tactile graphics artists. I'm the only transcriber on my team, but I work with tactile graphics artists, or I work independently. I'll give you another moment to respond. All right, I will go ahead and end that poll. It looks like we've got a lot of lone wolves here today, a lot of folks who are working independently on their transcription work. But we do have some folks who work in a team with other transcribers and graphics artists, and then a couple folks who work with tactile graphics artists.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Great. Yeah, I like the possibility that NimPro opens up in a team environment because you can have somebody working on doing more in NimPro than maybe I would do when I'm just trying to jam the file out kind of thing. Like, oh, I'll just clean it up when I'm reading it. So we'll go over that a little bit more as we move along. So let's do an NimPro overview. Here's what to expect. I am going to talk a little bit about NimPro. We're going to look at some screenshots of NimPro, and I've done it this way because the wizards are a little different than we're used to seeing in an average software program. And I wanted you to have this as something documented in the slides that will be available along with this session. But we're going to kind of move through it so we can get to our demo components. So, NimPro overview. Okay, when you open the XML file in NimPro, any alterations that you make don't actually affect the XML. So that's always kind of this protected file. But any changes that you do make to it, if you want to retain them, you need to save the NimPro project file, which is .nimpro. It's a long one. It's not, not like the docx or whatnot. So the biggest thing is there is no undo and there is no redo feature in NimPro. If you make a change, that is done. You can't undo it. And so save as you go. You can save multiple files and you can kind of stack them and cascade them as you are working and name them according to the action that you perform. And we're going to demo it. Don't get too freaked out at this point if it's starting to get a little nerve-wracking. You can't have multiple projects open in NimPro at one time. It's kind of working on one project at a time. And there's a great documentation online at duxburysystems.com/documentation/NimPro. There isn't kind of a clicky bit that I can describe for that. It's more of, that's the website to go get more info. Okay, so the interface, when you open up one of the NIMAS files, the interface is kind of split into a left pane and a right pane. Your left pane has a top and a bottom section. The right pane is divided vertically, so it has a left and a right. So the left pane here, the top is the structural outline of the book, and below that is an area that gives you information of word count, characters, and a page estimation, assuming literary content, of the content that is selected. So in this example, only front matter is selected. So that front matter, if it was literary book, would be 44 pages. That's an estimate. On the right pane is displaying the content of what is selected in the left pane. So You can select small portions or you can select large portions. If you're trying to scroll down in the right side and nothing's scrolling up, it may be because a fine selection has been made on the left pane. This gray area is a style pane. It is saying what style is applied to the associated text indicated. The next two slides I'm going to skip over because I just said them, but they are in the PowerPoint for you to have as a reference later. Okay. So now when we look at the top menu bar in NimPro, we have File, Edit, View, and Help. The File menu is where we have our opening, our closing of the program, where we save and export. Again, save, save, save. There's no undo or redo, so we need to save as we go. This is also where we will find preferences that affect how NimPro behaves. Exporting, we mentioned this earlier, but here they are nice and neat. We've got the RTF rich text, Duxbury print file, the DXP, and then we have Microsoft Word in both Doc and DocX. I always use DocX. It's the most current one. The Doc, it's available if you need it, but so let's look at preferences here. When we do file preferences, we get this dialog box. There's 3 tabs along the top of it. We can tell NimPro how to deal with images. We can deal with this image cache management. That's kind of the big one right there in the middle is, do you have enough room on your computer? Yeah, clear images after this. If I have I need to cache images, never. I have no room on my computer. So that's the big one on this first general thing. And if you are a QuickTac user, your location for QuickTac is at the bottom. Second one is a file export. This is where you can put your default DBT. I'm a Nemeth transcriber, so I always change that to the UEB Pane Nemeth template. And that just makes it so that when I go to export, I'm not having to do an extra click. It automatically has that selected. But at any time during export, you can make the choice between your DBT and your Microsoft Word template. So we have 2 sections, the template for DBT up at the top, and then the top template for Word. The third pane deals with MathML. Don't touch it. Leave it to automatically per document. All right, moving on. So the edit menu, this is where all of the wizards are going to happen. This is where it's all listed for how you can make some large scale changes that affect everything in your selection. Then at the bottom, we have this edit styles and edit text. Edit styles is for, large scale, like I want to change this heading to a list, or I want this list to be a heading. I want this paragraph to be a heading. But if I edit text, I can actually go in and insert text. If you found a great way that makes sense for you, let me know. But every time I've tried to edit the text or whatnot, I find that my proofreader comes back to me and says, why is there this text in here? So I've never used the page NR to suppress page number until I find that I like it just the way it is. That's a feature I'm not needing. But again, we're typically seeing in the edit menu of most programs, undo and redo, which doesn't exist. So save as you go. Okay, the view menu. This is great because that left pane, you can look at the tree structure where it's the pluses and the minuses, or you can look at it by page. You can check out the XML source of a selection if you want to. You can adjust the zoom level of the text on the screen, which is really nice. You can select a font. I just leave it as the generic, but if you really want to, you can go and change the font that's used to view on screen. That change focus is an F6. It goes between the left and the right pane. I usually don't use it because whenever you go and change back, it always jumps to the top of the section of what is selected. So you'll go from the left pane, and then when you go back to the right, it goes to the very top of that. So I often don't find myself using it. I'm usually a keyboard user, but in NimPro, I find myself using the mouse a lot more. And then finally is the help menu where you got great help topics, but also the big DBT thing is that activation wizard. So I've got to pitch this now. If you are going to have any Windows updates happen, please deactivate your software. If you leave on Friday and you come in on Mondays and network has pushed stuff on a typical basis and then your computers are updating over the weekend, Friday before you go home, deactivate your software because every once in a while, those updates do something that discombobulates your activation. And then you have to communicate with Duxbury to kind of have it reset. So if you're ever doing any system updates, it is recommended that you just deactivate the software. And if you deactivate one, it deactivates it all. So if you deactivate DBT, it takes care of it for NimPro as well. So it activates both. Like you don't have to keep going into one or the other and keep doing it. Okay. So now we're going to watch. Are there any questions at this time, Liz?
No, no questions in the chat.
I have a question, Stacy.
Hi,
So
Paula.
hi again. So would you recommend that we deactivate Duxbury as well? Is that
Well,
what you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah, I actually just deactivate DBT because it also deactivates
All right, the
NimPro.
NimPro.
And then when I reactivate DBT, it takes care of NimPro as well. But I have had so many Windows updates and I get complacent like, oh, I had one that came through, everything was fine. Oh, a second one came through, everything was fine. And then that third one, boom, I'm having to contact them and say, would you please help me get this reactivated? And it's
Okay,
usually
so
fairly simple. It's really simple to do just over the web. It's, like 5 clicks through. So I do recommend it, especially when I worked at the district. It was a real headache
yeah.
to have to do that. Come in on Monday and, you get the email and all the teachers had time, classroom teachers had time to think and they know what they want on Monday. And I'm having to
Right.
reactivate
Yeah.
when I knew I should have deactivated it on Friday.
Okay. Yeah, what you're describing is definitely just deactivating the license, right? Like that's what
Right.
you're saying, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's super easy. I mean, you just go into
Right.
that. In DBT, it's in a different location because you do have to go to DBT's help and then about DBT. And then within that about section is the deactivate button.
Right.
But here in NimPro, it's a straight up line right there in help. But this is one of those aspects that's needed for the software. This is how it's making sure that you have a licensed copy. And sometimes we just have to deal with the hiccups that come along with certain things. And that sometimes Windows updates introduce hiccups.
Yeah, I think I've experienced that already. Those problems. Yeah. Thank you.
You're
That's good
welcome.
to know. Yes.
Stacy, we have had a few questions in the chat about like deactivating and reactivating. So maybe if you could show that during either today
Yeah,
or a
I'll do a
future
demo of it.
session.
I'll
Perfect.
deactivate DBT and then I'll reactivate it here on us. That'd be
Perfect.
great. I think that would be valuable.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to keep zooming on. We did our help. Now let's talk about the wizards that are available to us, which are in the edit menu, and they apply to the selection in the left pane. So if you select the whole book, it applies to the whole book. If you just select one page, it only applies to that one page. But it has to be the selection in the left. There's no way to select text in the right pane. So it is on that left pane selection. So why these wizard. So let's get a little background of why some of these exist. And a majority of them exist because in the NIMAS XML file, everything's marked up as a list. And so in Braille, we know that many things guise themselves as a list. You know, exercise material looks like a list. A poem can look like a list. So these wizards just help to convert over some of that markup and heavy lifting over directly to adequate Braille styles. One of the big ones is the heading wizard. And we had somebody had asked somebody had emailed and asked, what are the biggest time-saving features in NimPro that may be overlooked? The heading wizard to me is my biggest time saver. I can't speak for other transcribers overlooking it, but to me, this is the powerhouse. This is where I get so much done because, you know, when you get your print book, you may be looking at your levels of headings and you're like, okay, the orange ones are going to be heading 3 and the blue ones are going to be heading 2. And oh, it just gets so confusing. And then you have to go back and figure out which one was which. And oh no, now I'm on page 585 and now there's a purple heading. What am I going to do with the purple heading? Well, you know, the NIMAS file has all of that structure there, and it's the publisher's structure of how they wanted it. And now in NimPro, it clearly tells us with the heading wizard how many of each instance from 1 to 6 exist in the file. And you can change that heading to another one. So you can say, I want all 73 level 4 headings to become level 3 headings in Braille. The big thing to know, and this is one that I've learned recently, because I was, you know, it's the struggle of figuring out this heading structure. Braille formats states that the cell 5 headings are only to the lowest. And instead of trying to decide what should be a level 2 or what should be it, centered headings get extended as necessary. So we would go ahead and change in this example where it's showing 38 level 1, 272 level 2, 345 level 3, and 73 level 4. What we would do is we could change the 73 of level 4 to level 3. And then the 272 that are at level 2 would become level 1. And then the 345 at level 3 would become level 2. So what we do is we've extended the centered headings as recommended in Braille formats. And that right there is the heavy lifting taken off. Look at how many there are. There's over 500 headings. I don't have to mess with it. NimPro took care of it. Thank you for the NIMAS file. All right, let's move on. Next wizard is the picture wizard. I rarely do this one. You can kind of hide pictures. Again, if you hide the pictures, they're hidden. There's no undo. This actually hides the pictures. I always leave in all of the production notes and all of the captions because I interact with them as I'm transcribing, as I'm proofreading the document, because I cannot tell you how many times they have saved my bacon trying to do an image description. So, some of these books have the most amazing image descriptions that I can rely on. Another one of the wizards is a table of contents wizard. And so this one takes a list and changes it to a table of contents. We really only use this if we have a brief contents or the table of contents. So this is a front matter wizard, but man, does it make it so easy, because in addition, it has a checkbox to change the list style to so check the checkbox to change the list to the table of contents. But down below, we have our text cleanup. It'll remove bold and it'll remove italic, which is super awesome. So our readers aren't getting inundated with just what is a visual prettiness and not required in Braille. The exercise wizard does the same thing in terms of changing a list over to exercises. So, a list has a blank line before and after, but if we have it as an exercise style in Duxbury, we don't always have some of the blank lines that exist between. The thing that's really interesting on this one is now we have an extra text box at the top that changes body styles to exercise instructions. So, or it'll say even directions, depending on which template. But again, you can get rid of all of the extraneous bold and extraneous italic. It can just strip it right out of there super fast. Who needs to see all caps design after every single, you got 5 different questions being asked of the student, and they have these bold and italic and underline and all in cap. Not needed. Get rid of it. Exercise wizard to the rescue. The list wizard, this one's really about stripping out the extraneous type forms, but also sometimes in the NIMAS file, you will have a list and it will be in the text itself, 1 period in text, 2 period in text, but it will also be marked up to start the list numbering at 1. So when you export it from NimPro, it'll say 1.1 point there because the XML is saying number it, and there's also numbering in the text. That's why you may get it duplicated. And so this remove only duplicate auto numbering is really helpful in those instances. The outline wizard, I rarely use this, but I think that's mostly because I'm a Nemeth transcriber and I don't often have extensive outlines. So it works though in the similar way as all these previous list ones do. It's changing a list to this outline. So it's going to have a deep nested structure. Now, I'm going to pause right here before we go to the glossary wizard. It's just to be aware, whenever you make these selections, like if you're doing it on a selection and you say remove the italic attribute, it removes italic from everything, not just the list, but from everything. So sometimes you have to be aware of what you're removing and maybe do it by hand later, not with the wizard. Okay, so now we have back matter wizards, the glossary. This one's awesome because you can change your heading styles to centered and remove those attributes. Index, very similarly, there's a lot to be kind of played with in here. You can change list styles, you can change heading styles, and so that way they're centered, and then you get the blank line before, but not after, so it butts up correctly according to Braille formats. And then when you're working in NimPro, the edit styles and edit text. So when you have edit styles selected in edit, your keyboard can apply a style very quickly. So here is a table outlining, if you hit H and then you hit the number 1, it'll apply heading 1. Okay. Liz, that's the end, but we're out of contact us.
Yeah, so if we want to kind of switch over to the demo section, I think that would be great.
All right. So if y'all have any questions, please reach out. I'm setting up things real quick while
Oh, sure. And I'll just note too, Alexa just put the link to our exit survey in the chat. So if you do need to hop off early, please do take a moment to take that survey. It helps us make sure that these sessions are what you need for your work, that they're helpful for you. We'll share that link again after the demo as well.
And if you are heading out, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, like we mentioned, this first session is a lot of kind of setup, making sure everyone's on the same page with NIMAS and the tools and everything. And the following sessions are going to be a lot heavier on the demo portion.
Okay, so here we are seeing my folder structure, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I downloaded my NIMAS file, and it is in my downloads folder. I am going to go to the location where I am going to store my project. I'm making the folder for my project. So great. Okay, now I have a working folder. I am going to I'm going to cut my zip file and I'm going to put it into my working folder. So I'm getting my brain all set up and working right on my process. So here I extract.
And I find this process can vary somewhat in length because sometimes textbooks have thousands of and thousands of images, and so extraction can take a little while sometimes.
Yeah. From here, my preference, you can do what you want, but I really want to show you what I do. So pick and choose what works for you. But I always put the zip file in that NIMAS file. It just keeps everything NIMAS related in together, separate from my transcription components. So now from here, one of the secrets that I really like is Control L selects my folder path. So when I get into NimPro and I open NimPro, I can open my file and just paste in, and it'll take me to the folder that I'm actually working at. Because I'll be juggling a couple of them, and I'm sorry, I don't remember that the forensic science is that ISBN number. So sometimes trying to get there, it's just easier with that little Control L. So I'm going to open up the XML in NimPro. And that's what we're seeing. Now, I'm going to split my screen, NimPro on the right and this on the left. Okay. So in our NIMAS file, we can look at the images and we see the throughout. This U00 is what's in the front matter. Then all these other ones, 1 through 18. So there's 18 chapters in this book. This U99, C99, that's the rear matter. I always look at rear matter and I always look at that throughout. So here in this demo, let's check out real quick what is in the rear matter. There are some equations, and then there's these caliper images. So this is going to be like where your glossary is, or where maybe your resources are, or extra stuff for the student. And it's really nice to know what is in this folder so that if you could possibly keep yourself from double working. And in this book, for example, the calipers showed up in another folder. So I don't have to double work myself, and nor do I have to waste time going to hunt and back. When I'm transcribing, I know, okay, make one caliper image and make it the correct size from the beginning so that you can accommodate all these other images that are going to be needed in the textbook. All right. NimPro. Now, NimPro is big and huge. All right. So view on the zoom, so we can change from the view zoom to extra large so that maybe you guys can see things a little bit better. All right, I made some notes and I'm double checking. All right, so the first thing I've done is I've opened up my NimPro and I want to save my file. Sorry. Here's the folder that we're in. I want to pause and go back. I'm sorry, don't get confused. This is my desktop. This is where we just made the folder. We made the folder Forensic Science. The other thing that I will do on Windows, I will right-click this and I will pin this to my quick access. And it loads it in to my line here and I move it up, since I know this is something that I'm working and it always, there it is. So that way, when I'm doing something else or I'm working, I can always get back to this. So here we are back in NimPro. And if I wasn't there already, I could go to my quick access and I'm automatically in where I need to be. So what I'm doing is I'm saving my NimPro file. So in the file name, sorry, you will see me miss stuff. Brian and brain become the same word often. I type so fast and make that mistake. Okay. So here's the biggest time saver where we're talking about headings. So we've looked at the front matter images, we looked at the rear matter images. Kind of just take a tour of the book, like before you start making any big decisions. Take, have a Coca-Cola and sit down and just kind of peruse it, because you may find something super weird. And here in chapter 1 is something super weird. We have a bold heading. That should really be a heading. I mean, it's bold, but it says it's body text. So we could continue and look through all of these different sections of the book, and then we can come down and we come to another area. Here we are jumped down in chapter 1 to the review, and really weird that we have these bold areas that really should be headings, in my opinion. So let's take a look. Let's select the entire book. So I held down the shift key, clicked front matter, held shift rear matter. So that just made the contiguous selection right there. Edit heading wizard. This book has 35.1, 501 level 2, and 64 level 3. Okay, this doesn't have a level 4 like we saw in the PowerPoint, but this still has something super odd. You cannot have an entire textbook with just 35 centered headings. That would not be fair to our reader. Our readers are looking for these gaps. They're looking for these to be the stopgap when they're scanning to find the headings, to find the sections relevant to what they need to read. So in this instance, I would change 501 level 2s to heading 1 and 64 to level 2. And that way, I now have heading 3 available to me to go and work on some of those paragraph headings. Now I'm going to say it applied it to the entire book. It's all been done. And what I'm going to do again is I'm going to save again. I'm not going to save it as forensic science. I am going to now say this is where I made headings. This is the headings change. So now I have another one. Okay. So those blank lines are like stop signs. They're really great for our readers. So that's why we made those selections. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about this left pane with shift and control for contiguous and non-contiguous. So let's collapse front matter. So here in chapter 1, let's say a classroom teacher wants, hey, I really want this. What do forensic science? You can expand this. Let's expand it, make it easier. So now you can read a little bit more. So what do forensic scientists do? But the student also would be really nice for them to see as somebody who already has a career in forensic science. I held down the control button and I can just now have those 2 sections. So it was pages 14 here. There's page 5. And whatever page this is. But when I go to export this selection, it will only be those 2. So there is where we don't have to go linearly to get what we want. Let's say this, I want to just showcase textbook, the keyboard shortcuts. When it's a heading, you can hit just the number if it's already a heading. So 2, and then it takes you to the next place. So arrows, but you can make this a heading 4, but back to heading 1. So those keyboard shortcuts act where your cursor is in the text.
So
You
Stacy, the on the left panel, the divisions there, are those all the heading ones? Is that what's going to show up there for you?
Not necessarily. This is
Okay.
kind of it is the structure of the book,
Yeah.
and you can see that they've changed, and each one is starting with the heading one, but we still don't have all of the, I might have misunderstood, but that heading change didn't necessarily mean all of the heading ones are what's listed here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because some of these could be heading threes. It just depended on how they were sorted
Okay.
in our, how they're listed and sorted. Like we can see here now we have our heading two.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and now that I'm thinking about it, because this is a NIMAS level, it probably did adjust it. So what we may be looking at is like these were all the heading ones, and these were the heading twos, and this was the heading three. And we've just
Yeah.
adjusted it so that all of these now are heading one. All right, back to what I'm doing. That's interesting, something to think about. All right. Okay, now I want to show you a view by page. So, and then we're going to kind of just finish up with what we're doing today. We don't have to see it all by that structure of the tree. We can look at it by page. And let's say our teacher has said to us, hey, I really would like the student to have the chapter 1 review. I can use my shift, select 15 through 17 because that's what the classroom teacher has requested. Now let's use some wizards and showcase some of that. These lists are actually exercises. So let's use the exercise wizard. Let's change all the list styles to exercises, and we'll change the text above to directions. We're going to leave the italic as italic because here we have the word forensic that's italic. But let's get rid of all this bold. We don't need all that bold. So let's get rid of that. Okay. Well, this is great. The important information that the word forensic was in italics is retained, but now we have all these objective ones. Ignore the emphasis. Right click on that. Ignore the emphasis. This is where you can kind of come into your transcription journey and like have a coffee moment and do some like mindless clicking. I right click and I get rid of. I right click and get rid of. Okay. Going down, here's what I wanted to show you. We had a section that was part of page 16 and 17 that the teacher requested. Apparently, the student's going to be doing a research project and needed this bibliography. So we can go through and format this bibliography the way we want it to be. So it's a bibliography. That's kind of a big heading. Alert the student, heading 1. Let's make that centered. Okay, books and journals, heading 2. Great. This exercise needs to be a list. Keyboard shortcut, list. I can use my arrows to go down, or I can hit the space bar and it goes to the next thing. So those are all lists again. They got changed to exercise with the wizard. Here we have internet resources, which is a subdivision or is also a heading 2 for books and journals. But right below it, we have TED Talks, which is a subdivision of internet resources. So here's where we can apply a heading 3, which we would not have been able to do if we wouldn't have changed our heading structure. Let's make this all back down to lists. Okay, but here's YouTube. It needs to be a heading 3 as well, since it's an internet resource. Great. Our 3 things, good to go. Let's export this and get it ready. Export those selected settings. Let's do it directly to DBT. So pages 15 to 17, DBT, save it. We want this to be, we're going to pretend that this isn't an MF, and we're just going to go with our pre-UEB. Nope. Sorry, Bana right there. Export it. And now we have our DBT. Oh, come on. It crashed.
Oh no.
Oh no. Okay. So sorry. That really showcases a product well, doesn't it? Okay. Okay. We are going to be doing more in NimPro in our future sessions. Let me show you the activation because we are coming up on time and I
We
don't
are,
want
we
you to
are.
feel like you are going to be here forever. So we had, so I'm really sorry that happened. We will be seeing more of NimPro and how to export out, but the export was the final of that. Okay.
Oh, someone in the
DBT.
chat said that that's the reality. It just doesn't always work as it's supposed to.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is because I have a few versions going on my computer right now because I do some testing, and so sometimes I run into the wrong thing, and so I am sorry, guys. But activating, let's show you. I am in DBT 14.1, help about DBT. Click the button deactivate. Okay, hold on. Where did it go? Wow. There it is. Sorry, because I'm sharing and all my screens got discombobulated. When you click that deactivate button, you get the deactivation wizard. Next, deactivate this computer. Next, it comes up with something that says, do you want to allow those? Yes. Deactivate through the internet automatically. Yes. Deactivation in progress. Yay! So you can actually view and print this deactivation if you want, and it's just a text file that you can save wherever you want. Okay, but I canceled it. I don't need to do it. But now I'm only can use Duxbury in demo mode. But if I reopen it, it says it's been deactivated. Now I can click the button to activate and do the exact same. Activate this computer. Yes, I want you to make changes. Do it over the internet. This is all my stuff. And I want to skip registration. I don't need to fill it out. I've already done it once. And then boom. Success. Finish to exit.
Oh, that was pretty quick.
Yeah. So they've made it very, very simple. I'm going to stop sharing now. Oh, wait, no. I'm sorry. Guys, we have just one more thing that we need to do, and that is closing us out. And I'm going to turn it over to you for the
Oh, yeah.
contact and sum up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we've shared our email a couple of times today, but if you have any questions about getting a NIMAC account, if you don't have one already, or anything about what was covered today or in future classes, you can reach out to us at nimac@aph.org, or you're welcome to call us as well. Alexa put our contact info in the chat for you, and then she also added the exit survey link again, and we have that as in a QR code that we'll show in a minute as well. And then I think the other thing, it's just a reminder about what we have coming up in our next session. So next time we will be focusing on kind of two things. Stacy will be giving some more kind of guidance on how to sort of structure your project because textbook transcription can be a really big and long process. So you want to make sure you're organized about it. I think organization is very important for this work, from what I can tell anyway. I'm not a transcriber, but it seems very important. So she's going to provide some more information about that, and then really get into working with the front matter. And the demo portion will be a lot longer for really the rest of the 2, 3, 4, and 5 sessions. So next week, front matter. And then the week after, we'll be talking about the body matter. Session 4 again will be the rear matter, those structures that you find at the end of the book. And then session 5 will be a deep dive on math, which Stacy is has spent a lot of time working on and is very good at. So I think they'll all be really great sessions. And then we'll wrap up session 6 with Q&A, and the NIMAC will share some more about the eBraille file format and kind of where we are status-wise on producing eBraille.
Yeah. And just another shout out for the ICEB if you need to register for that, because it is next Thursday.
Yes, yeah, thanks for reminding us. And the exit survey QR code is on the screen here. Please do take a moment to complete that. It's a really brief survey just to let us know how this session was and give us your thoughts, especially on additional topics for this series. We would love to hear from you about that. And with that, I will go ahead and stop the recording.